The type of stitch that we're going to be learning is called the square stitch. Square stitch is a very easy stitch to learn with beads, and it is helpful to use round beads as opposed to cylindrical or biconed or any other shaped bead. This type of bead that I have right here is a 4mm pink cat's eye bead, item number GB433. The type of cording that I'm using is a size D Nemo thread, item number BC905. This is in a red color so that you can see it a little bit better during this video. You'll start by stringing on any number of beads that you wish for your base row. I've chosen to thread only 6. One thing about the square stitch that you'll notice is that there is no stop bead. Your stop bead will be stitched with every new bead that you attach, and I'll go over that so it makes more sense here in just a moment. So I'm taking my first bead with my needle. I'm going to thread on another bead. Now I'm holding my bead in between my index and my thumb, and I'm going to take my needle around and back through that last bead that I threaded on. With going through, you are really doing a stop bead technique, but you're threading on another cat's eye bead in between. So now you have beads stacked on one another. Thread up your next bead off your base row, take your needle and go back through the newest cat's eye bead that you just attached, and if you have to rearrange it with your fingers, this is the time to do it. The most difficult row in square stitching is going to be the very first row that you thread on. From there on out, it's much easier. So this is what it looks like before I thread on my next cat's eye bead. Pick up another bead, and then I'm going to go through the second to last cat's eye bead in my base stitch, like so, and then pull this tight. What you should wind up with now is a group of 4 cat's eye beads, 2 stacked on top of another. When I'm working square stitch, what usually happens is I work with all of my new rows facing towards me. So what it looks like on this video is that I'm working down. When I have enough stitches attached, then I'll flip my work over and work away from me, adding new rows. But for right here, I want to make sure that I have complete control when I'm adding new beads on. So just like before, take your needle back through, and another point to keep in mind when you're doing this square stitch, if you look fairly close, you can see the red thread peeking out between each of these pink beads. This is another one of those bead weaving stitches where it is important to have the correct color thread. When you're working with lighter color beads like this pink or white, I would probably use either a pink cord, of course, or you could use white. It will blend in very easily with these lighter color beads. Move down your third bead, thread on your third bead, and then use that same technique again, going through the third to last bead on your base row and then pulling it tight so that it fits in place with all the rest of the beads right there in that new row that you're creating underneath, like so. And as I'm adding each bead, I'm making sure that my cord is nice and tense behind it so that I don't have any slack in between any of these beads. Continue with this same technique of looping and adding new beads until you're done with your first row, and then I'll show you how to make the turn. Here I am at the end of my first row, and I flipped my work over so that you can see it a little bit better. So this right here is my new row. This cord up here at the top is my working thread, and it's coming out of the very leftmost cat's eye bead here on this top row. Now to continue working, you can either choose to zigzag back and forth, left to right to left, or this is one of those bead weaving techniques where you can actually flip your work over so you can always work from right to left, or you can always work from left to right. Another cool thing about square stitching is that you don't have to add only one bead every time. This is what's called a 2-bead square stitch. This will save you a little bit of time too, and especially if you're just starting out and you've kind of got the hang of the 1-bead stitch, why not try 2? To make it easier, I'm going to flip my work over so that my new row is working towards me again, and I've threaded on 2 of my cat's eye beads. Here's the cool part. Instead of going through the 1 bead at a time with my needle to make another loop, I'm going to go through 1, 2 beads. What this makes is a stack of beads right off the bat. So here's my 2 beads all ready to go. What you can do is you can alternate. So you can do 1 stitch, 2 stitch, 1 stitch, 2 stitch, or you can continue and do a couple rows in 2, a couple rows in 1. Either way that you decide to do it is completely up to you, but here's an added benefit. If you decide to do the 2-bead square stitch, your thread will actually be hidden a little bit more. In other words, you won't be able to see it between each set of beads. You'll only be able to see it in between every other set of beads. Continue working this same stitch until you have as many beads as you want to. And another very, very important tip, because you could see what was happening up here at the top, is that you'll have slack forming, especially in that very first bead that you threaded on in the very first row. So whenever you possibly can, make sure you double check your whole stitch work to make sure that there's no slack, and if you need to at any point in time, you can flip your work over, twist that tail around your finger, and continue to work that way. Pieces of tape or a bead stopper, item number BS060, work just as well too.